Welcome to my channel. Today we bring you the screams from below. Our next scary story comes from a user. I was traveling in France with a friend and we were in Paris for about a week. We both love to do urban exploration and searching for abandoned things. On our last day there, we decided to go check out the Paris Catacombs. If you don't know what the catacombs are, it's an underground tunneling maze system where over 6 million people have died. It's quite the tourist trap. There are parts that are open to the public with small admission fees. But there are also parts that are completely blocked off and forbidden to enter. We found a hole dug out by other explorers in the restricted section and crawled through it. Once inside, we realized that this part of the catacombs wasn't like any part we had seen before. All the tunnels were completely empty and stretched out in unnatural straight lines. There were no bones or graffiti or anything like that. It was just bare concrete. This made us really uneasy, because if this place is supposed to be full of dead bodies, then why were these tunnels so clean, like somebody had swept them out? And who would do that here? Then we saw something strange up ahead. It was too dark to make out exactly what it was, but it looked like a bricked-up passage. My friend and I looked at each other, knowing that we shouldn't go any further, but we couldn't help ourselves. We had to see what was behind that wall. There was some sort of metal detector in the wall, but it didn't seem to be doing anything. We tried turning it over to see if it had a power source, but it didn't. So we broke it and carried on. After crawling through the narrow passage, we emerged into a large chamber. There were pillars holding up the ceiling and strange symbols carved into the walls. In the middle of the room was a long table, and on it were 4 chairs in a row. And around the edge of the room were what appeared to be seats. It almost looked like a waiting room. The air in this place was stagnant and cold, and I could feel goosebumps rising all over my arms. My friend and I stood there awkwardly for a few seconds. I was trying to think of something to say, but I was completely stumped. I finally said, "Wow," and my voice sounded so loud and echoing in the room. As I walked further into the chamber, the temperature seemed to drop and my hair stood on end. I turned to my friend and told him I wanted to get out of there. He didn't respond. He was staring at the table. In the middle of the table was what appeared to be a red stain, but as we got closer, we realized that it was actually paint. Someone had painted over the entire surface of the table with bright red paint. It was thick, almost like the consistency of honey. What's strange is that paint doesn't tend to stay wet for very long, especially in a place like this that has never seen sunlight. Yet it didn't look like it had dried at all. Then we heard it. At first, it sounded like whispers. They seemed to be coming from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It sounded like many voices talking at once. Then the voices began to rise in pitch until they were screaming. It sounded like a choir of people being led in song, but it was twisted and corrupted, like a funeral dirge. It was extremely unsettling. As we listened, we realized that the whispers were getting louder and more intense. We couldn't see anything, but it felt like we were being watched. We started running for the exit, making our way back through the catacombs. The sound of the screams grew louder and more frantic as we went. Finally, we found the hole that led back outside. We crawled out, gasping for breath. Once we were sure that we were safe, we started laughing hysterically. My legs felt weak and shaky, and I was sweating profusely. I told my friend that we should never go back there, and he agreed. We made plans to meet up the next day and head to the airport together. But when we met up, I told him that I had changed my mind. I wanted to go back to that room and uncover the truth. He begged me not to go back, but I was determined. I was sure that I could face whatever was in that room. I told him I'd be fine and to meet me back at the car in 1 hour. He reluctantly agreed. I knew that I wouldn't be able to find the exact place again, but I figured that if I walked around the outer perimeter of the catacombs, I might stumble upon it by accident. As I was walking, I noticed that I wasn't alone. There were other explorers around, but I ignored them and continued on. After about 30 minutes, I had almost given up hope of finding it, when suddenly I heard those piercing screams again. I followed the sound, and soon enough, I found the entrance to that forbidden passageway. This time I wasn't scared. I was angry. Angry that this thing had scared me away, and angry that it was hiding from me. I pushed past the bricks and entered the room. But I wasn't prepared for what I saw. When I entered the room, I noticed that it was empty. There were no sounds or whispers, and everything was silent. I thought to myself, it's probably just a recording. I tried to find the source of the noise, but couldn't find anything. That's when I saw the 4 chairs around the table. Each chair was identical, except one of them was slightly different. It was facing the opposite direction. The rest were facing inward towards the table, but this one was facing the entrance. I walked over and turned the chair around so that it faced the same direction as the others. But when I did, I noticed something strange. There was a small indentation in the seat, as if someone had been sitting in it. It occurred to me that I hadn't seen a single person since I entered this place. And if I was really being followed, how could I shake it off? I started to panic. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes on the chair. As I turned to leave, I tripped over something and fell to the ground. As I lay there on the cold, hard floor, I looked down and saw that I had tripped over my own camera. It had fallen out of my pocket and onto the floor. I scrambled to pick it up, brushing dirt and grime onto my clothes. I pressed the power button. It was still recording. I ran out of the catacombs as fast as I could, making my way back to the surface. I burst out of the opening and collapsed on the grass, gasping for breath. I looked back to see if anyone was following me, but I couldn't see into the darkness of the catacombs. I managed to convince myself that I was safe, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I raced home, hardly daring to breathe. When I got home, I pored over the footage from my camera, hoping to find the source of the noise. I played it back frame by frame, but it was all just static. But when I reached the part where I fell, I saw something terrifying. It was my entire group entering the room, except I had recorded it from behind. It showed my friend and me entering the room and walking up to the table. It even showed the 2 of us looking at the chair, but that's not even the scariest part. After I fell, the camera fell out of my pocket and landed on the floor, but it didn't show me picking it up. Instead, it showed the camera rolling across the floor and coming to a stop at the base of the chair. The screen then went black. I know what you're thinking. Maybe the camera just fell and knocked itself off. Well, that's impossible. There wasn't a single soul in that room. I checked it over and over, but there was no one there. So who or walked out with my camera? I'll never know, but whatever it was, it's still out there. And I haven't heard those screams in the catacombs since. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this scary video, please hit the like button below and subscribe so you never miss out on any new stories.